Welcome to Hello Therapy, a podcast to help you take charge of your mental health through evidence-based psychological tips and tools straight from the therapy room so that you can live life better. Have you ever wondered how to turn your child's digital world, including their smartphone, from a potential minefield into a safe space for growth and connection? If you are a parent like me trying to navigate the often confusing world of smartphones, internet use, and social media with your kids, then today's episode is going to help. I am talking to the incredible Sunday Times bestselling author, Dr. Marta Deiros Collado. Marta is a clinical psychologist with over 20 years of clinical and academic experience. Marta has created a hugely successful social media platform where she distills complex child psychology into easily digestible concepts for her 265k followers. In addition to her amazingly successful debut book, How to Be the Grown Up, Why Good Parenting Starts With You, her Confident Parent courses have been sold to thousands of parents globally. So let's dive in. So thank you so much, Marta, for coming on to the Hello Therapy podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We are going to tackle an issue today that is very topical. So, smartphones and children. There are so many topics that I could talk to you about, but we're going to hone in on smartphones. I know that you've got a new resource that has come out that we'll talk about as well. So, do you want to first introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
So I'm Dr. Marta. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work with children and young people and their families. And I've been doing that for 20 years this September.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So your new resource is called The Confident Parent's Guide to Being Smartphone Savvy, and it's a brilliant resource. I've read it. You talk about digital resilience. So I wanted to
Mhm.
start with that. Can you tell us a bit about what that is and why it's important?
So digital resilience is the ability to quickly recover, process from events that might be challenging online. And that's not just things that you see on a website. So it might also include things like getting a text message that upsets you, or being sent a photograph that, upsets you, or seeing things like maybe seeing a photograph of yourself that you haven't given consent to and it's now posted all over the place. And the reason why digital resilience is really important is because I think lots of adults don't know about it, don't have it, have never been taught it. And one of the key features of it is that when you don't build digital resilience with full avoidance of technology or smartphone use, you can only build digital resilience when you have appropriate opportunities to experience challenges developmentally appropriately and learn from them. So it's similar to emotional resilience in a way, because we don't become resilient just by doing things well. Resilience is built from struggle. So when we trip up, when we mess up, it's in the gap between the failing or the hurting yourself or whatever it is, and then recovering, that resilience is born. So when we think about resilience with children, particularly teenagers, I feel like digital resilience is an area that isn't really talked about. I don't think at the moment in the UK schools, we're not teaching it, and we really should. And that's why in my digital resource, I'm trying to offer parents some skills and some strategies that can help them start to build it in a way that is hopefully simple enough
Yeah.
that you can embed it in your home without feeling like, oh my God, this is such a big challenge. I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And what I would say is it's really interesting because I did lots of research before building my guide. There are schools in Scandinavia that focus on digital resilience and digital skill building, and it begins in primary school. And it's
Wow.
fascinating because lots of children don't have smartphones, but they have these skills and they have them embedded as part of the curriculum. And so when they become older and they have access to tech on their own, unsupervised, they know how to kind of deal with things like cyberbullying. They know how to deal with a troll saying something to them, or even like a text message that shows up and it upsets them.
Yeah.
Something really basic and simple, but they've built that resilient skill because
Mm.
they've been given kind of model samples, questions, things to do online with teachers. So it's not just like a free for all, see something scary and react. It's what if this happened in this scenario? How would you respond? Let's learn some skills. And I think
Mm.
it's so important. We don't do this in the UK. We don't do this across most of Europe. And I just think it always begins in our homes. So if I can offer some strategies for parents to begin this conversation, then perhaps our children, the next generation, will have skills that we're still lacking and we're still kind of muddling through.
Mhm. And that's something that I really like about your digital resource. It's got you call it the family phone pledge, where
Yeah.
if I've got this right, you sit together and you read it and you discuss it and you sign it. Can you tell us a bit about it and how that's helpful?
So I think at the moment there's this big conversation about smartphones and whether they should just be banned. Not just for children. I feel like the conversation is wider. Like, are smartphones unhealthy? Are they ruining our mental health? All of this.
Yeah.
And I think there is evidence that it can have a negative impact, but we also have evidence that it can have a positive impact. And actually, for example, in lockdown, there's been like a longitudinal study done with teenagers about the fact that those who didn't have access to social media, smartphones, tech, did much worse in their mental health in teenagehood than those who did. Because, of course,
Right.
when you're separated from physical contact, teenage development is about peer socialization. So, of course,
Yeah.
they did. To me, that makes complete sense. But there are lots of longitudinal studies happening with young people, and they're actually based in the UK, like a lot of them. And what's really interesting is that it's not black and white. It's not that it's
Yeah.
definitely harmful. There is this like gray area of it does have some benefit. So what we need to understand is what is the benefit and where does it come from? So we can do more of that and less of the stuff that is
Mhm.
risky. But the reason why I called it the family phone pledge is because for me, as a clinical psychologist with children and families, it isn't just about telling our children or teenagers, you can't have this, but we have it in our pockets. Fine. I
Yeah.
think there's something really strange about saying this is not okay in childhood, but then when you're an adult, it's a free for all.
Right.
Like that doesn't make any sense, like to me, logically.
Yeah.
And I think I wasn't taught how to use a smartphone. I definitely built some really bad habits with it, which I am still fixing some. And others I feel
Mm.
like, oh, I've really got a good handle on this now. And I haven't just started this like this year. I noticed this a while back. It was like,
Yeah.
I need to do something slightly different. But particularly having children. And one of the things I noticed online and widely is that there are these contracts, and they're mainly American, but there's these contracts on smartphones that parents give children, which are about them, not us, or not us as a family group,
Mhm.
just you, the child. And to me, they're very controlling. They do not align with kind of the evidence base that I hold around child family relationships.
Yeah.
They're not aligned with me personally, just as a woman and as a mother, like absolutely
Mm.
not. And so I thought it feels like something different could exist. What could that look like? And that's where this
Okay.
came out from. Because I think, like most things parenting wise, you are their best role model. The power comes from how you are with your child, how you are with your
Mhm.
smartphone. That's what teaches your child what to do, what not to do. But kids watch us all the time. They
Yeah.
know our smartphones are important to us if we're always holding them. If as soon as they buzz, we interrupt their conversation or their play or whatever we're doing with another adult, and we're like, wait, sorry, my phone just went, right? Children
Mm.
learn, oh, these things that they have in their pocket, they must be
Yeah.
really interesting and important. But they also learn when we set boundaries around them and we're explicit about them. I don't need my phone right here. I can go and put it on a high shelf, or it's dinner time. I don't care if my phone buzzes. I know it's not urgent. I can catch up with it in half an hour. What's half an hour going to change?
Yeah.
Realistically, nothing. Put it away. Name it. Talk about it.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
Family Friend Pledge is about opening up conversation around smartphone and also maybe wider digital tech in your
Mhm.
home. And it's also about negotiating with your children. So, one of my hopes is that if it just means that parents have a conversation that might sound like, what do you think is good about smartphones? What do you think is not so good about smartphones? When are you okay for me to be on my phone? When
Mhm.
we're together? When is it okay? When is it not okay? How do we negotiate some rules in our family that makes sense to us as parents, but makes sense to our children? Because
Yeah.
then the idea of saying, I don't want you to have a smartphone until you're way older. This is my conversation with my 5-year-old. You're not having a smartphone in primary school. And these are my reasons why. Now, you tell me when you don't like it that I have my smartphone on me, because that's also important. It's
Yeah.
important in our relationship, and it's important in this idea of we're building healthy strategies together. And as
Mhm.
children get older, maybe you negotiate different boundaries. It's a
Yeah.
negotiation, it's a conversation. And so that's why it's a family phone pledge. It's not a smartphone contract for your child or just for
Mm.
you. To me, the conversations are more important. And then if you can write some rules that are unique to your family, because different families have different needs, different
Yeah.
contexts, then it makes sense. Like our daughter, for example, not just meal times, and smartphones are not allowed at meal times anyway, because I don't like it as
Mhm.
adults. I think it's not very nice. They interrupt the kind of
Yeah.
normal social interaction that you might do around a meal.
Mhm.
But for my 5-year-old, she really doesn't like it if we go on a walk or if we go on a day trip and we get our smartphones out.
Mm.
She doesn't like it. She feels like it interrupts
Yeah.
family time. But I use my smartphone for taking photos a lot. I love a photo. I love a video of my kids.
Mhm.
So we negotiated that it's okay to take photos and videos. And
Yeah.
she can also say, I want to take a photo or a video with our smartphone. She's allowed to
Yeah.
do that with me there.
Mm.
But we have to be explicit. I'm taking it out to take a photo now, and now I'm putting it back away. Rather than, oh, I just got a work email and I'm going to reply. Or I
Yeah.
got a text message from Auntie so, not allowed on a day trip.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
okay. And we work through it. We get it wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, Liz, it's really hard. But it's also about staying accountable to it. So if our daughter goes, hey, you're checking your phone. You said you wouldn't check your phone. We're on a day trip. I'll be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I got that wrong. I'm still learning about this boundary and messed up. That's okay. I'll put it away. And my hope is that when she's a teenager, whenever it is that she has a phone, when she trips up and I'm like, hey, we said no phone in your room. You've got a phone in your room. Then she'll
Mhm.
be like, I've seen my parents mess up and I've seen them respect my thoughts, my
Yeah.
values, my opinions. So now I'm going to respect you too and say, oh, yeah, sorry, mom. I find it really hard. Take my
Yeah.
phone away. To me, it's a
I'm
conversation that's lifelong. It's not for like,
yeah.
you know, just a tiny amount of time.
Mm. Yeah, I wish that we'd had this conversation about 4 years ago because I think I would have approached this whole can I get a smartphone thing with my eldest. So he's almost 16 a little differently. And I think it's really interesting that just the idea of having a conversation with your child about
Yeah.
their perception of your smartphone use. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of like a new thing in my mind that you've introduced. So that's really interesting. And then using that, as you say, opening up the discussion around, look, let's think about the role that these smartphones have in our lives and how do we want that to look?
Yes. I think, for me, also the family phone pledge isn't just for families like mine, where my kids don't have a smartphone. So
Yeah.
feels like a healthy conversation to begin. I think it is for also families like yours who already have a smartphone, because as a
Mm.
clinical psychologist, I see all sorts of families. And I have this big, like, no judgment sort of attitude. I just don't see how it helps to have, I don't know, some very rigid rules where you're excluding a big portion of our society
Mhm.
into a conversation. Because what you're saying is if you give your child a smartphone, that's wrong, that's bad, it's affecting their mental health. Like, what kind of a parent would do that? That is a conversation that I'm not happy to engage with. I will engage with it with curiosity about why have you got such strong views? Like, are you
Mm.
able to have a conversation about this? But if you're not, because you think, it's very black and white, then I really
Yeah.
struggle with that. Because I
Yeah.
think you gave your child a smartphone for whatever reasons. I don't know your reasons, but maybe it's about understanding those reasons rather than judging them. And then this conversation we're having now about negotiating, you can have it now. You can say, this is where we're at. There's some things I'm always about being explicit with our kids. So I'm worried about X, or I feel sad about X, or, I don't think this feels right when whatever
Yeah.
you use your smartphone at night, or I think it's
Mm.
affecting your sleep. I don't know. I think when you're doing your homework, like you're not concentrating because you're spending too much time on your phone. I don't know. But that conversation can still happen. And you say, can we talk about this? Okay, I
Mhm.
gave it to you with free reins, but now I'm thinking, Maybe we need to adapt. Maybe we need to change something. And I'm willing to change something for me as well, not just
Yeah.
you. Maybe we all need to have this conversation.
Hmm.
I think, we know this from science. It's really healthy as parents to mess up and to be open with our kids and say, I did something wrong.
Mm.
And it's okay to say, I'm not feeling like what we're doing at home with our smartphones work.
Yeah.
And that's something I wanted to really come across. I don't know if it does in the guide, but I really want that to come across, that this isn't a conversation before you get a smartphone. This is a conversation for whatever stage you're at.
Yeah.
If you're trying to navigate this, it's complex, it's tricky, it's imperfect. My guide isn't perfect in any way, but
Mm.
maybe it offers like a starting point, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Just to let you know, if you struggle with anxiety or OCD, I want to personally invite you to check out my YouTube channel. I have a growing library of videos that offer practical step-by-step strategies to help you cope with all types of anxiety and OCD, leaving you feeling more empowered and confident in managing your mental health. So head over to YouTube, search Dr. Liz White, or hit the link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe for regular tips and tools that you can use to start feeling better today. Let's get back to the episode. Yeah, no, it definitely is a starting point, and it's such a good resource. I think where a lot of parents get stuck is what age? What age should a child have a smart? Or
Mm,
my youngest started asking when he was about 10, and we
mm,
held out for a couple of years. But you get that age-old thing. But all my friends have a smartphone, and then you start thinking about, well, if he doesn't have a smartphone, then is he, going to be excluded from what's going
mm,
on? And it is a really important aspect of social development, isn't it? To be able to communicate with your peer group, with your friends. But do you have any thoughts on an ideal age, or what not
mm,
to do? And I hear what you're saying earlier about you're not that prescriptive, but I guess it's
mm.
it's so difficult, isn't it, as a parent to know what the best thing to do is?
I think it is really hard to know what the best thing to do is. Well, I guess what this brings up for me is that the family phone pledge actually started as me having a conversation with some mum friends to
Mm,
say, hey, what would happen if we just agreed not to give our kids a smartphone? So my daughter's got a little group of friends at school. She's still very young. And of course, the
yeah.
friendships are going to change. But we were just having this conversation one evening, as mums do, on a Friday night. And I just said, you know what? I'm not going to give my child a smartphone. So if you all agree not to give your children a smartphone, what are they going to miss out on?
Yeah.
Right? Which is why I love the idea of delaying smartphones. And I love the idea of some schools saying, we don't
Mm,
agree with smartphones being on the premises, because that's, I mean, I've seen it in schools because I also work with schools sometimes
yeah.
where you see the teenagers, they're all on benches looking at this, and other kids who don't
Yeah.
have them, they're just like, I'm so left out.
Yeah.
That's not great. So can we find a balance? Can we find something that works? And for me, the peer pressure, the parent pressure of having to give a phone to your child so they don't miss out, we could
Mm,
remove that. I do like dumb phones. I don't like how they're called,
yeah.
really, but I
Mhm.
like the idea of old school Nokias, retro phones,
Yeah.
better way of describing them for me. I like the idea of giving something to children where they can chat and they can call. So once upon a time, I was raised without a smartphone, giving my age
Mhm.
away. We had landlines, and
Yeah.
I love talking to my friends after school. It's part of teenagehood that you actually say
Yeah.
bye at the school gates, and then you get home and you instantly want to talk to them again.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember my parents, I was very privileged, but they gave me a landline. I say privileged because they were happy to do this. I think they got a deal. And so I got a different number in my room with a
Wow.
landline. And I remember lying on my bed chatting to my mates. And it was great. But my parents were like, you're hogging the phone. And it's actually not great because
Yeah.
sometimes we need to use it and you're on it all the
Yeah.
time. To me, that's what like an old school Nokia might do. And
Mhm.
maybe we're also teaching kids responsibility. And if we're going to teach resilience, digital resilience, maybe we begin with that, with texting and
Mhm.
supervise and boundaries. Yep, you've got a Nokia and you can have it after school for this amount of time. I'm saying
Yeah.
the brand, but it could be any brand, of course.
Yeah.
And you can have it for this amount of time. And then it's removed at dinner time and, done. And then at weekends, we negotiate. How long do you use it for? How often do you call your
Yeah.
friends? How much money do we put on it? Because when the money's gone,
Mm.
it's gone. All these things, like we're teaching kids skills. That's okay. We could do that.
Yeah.
But when? I know there was another part to your question, which is what age? Oh, I think it's really difficult for me to give a prescriptive age. So
Yeah.
there is some research that says before the age of 14 with young girls, the risks of owning a smartphone are greater.
Right.
So 14 seems to be like, there seems to be a critical age, which is
Mm.
12 to 14, where it's actually very healthy for children not to have a smartphone
Okay.
and not to have kind of immediate access to the apps online world. Ignore the
Yeah.
apps for me. You can remove all the apps. If you can Google stuff, you're still going to see things that as parents we might not want our children to see. So there is this critical age point. There's some research on it. About 12 to 14 is like the danger area.
Okay.
And for boys, it seems to be 12. And for girls, it's
Mm.
14. And
Okay.
it's for girls, it's to do with image and it's to do with self-esteem. And with boys, it is more to do with access to violence and also explicitly sexual pornographic
Yeah.
images that just kind of get thrown at them.
Yeah.
So for me, yeah, something post 14 feels healthy, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm aware because of my work that I know young people who have smartphones and for very good reasons in their families, much younger. Is it harmful for them? I don't know. There's a risk benefit balance that each family
Yeah.
needs to do. And I can't assess that without knowing you and your family. I can't help you
Mm-hmm.
think it through. But for example, I know children who have type 1 diabetes, and a lot of the new kind of the way we treat diabetes now has apps that go on smartphones. And it's done so
Mm-hmm.
that parents can keep an eye and support their children. Now, do I expect a 12-year-old to be checking their blood tests independently? No. No, I do not. I need a parent to be responsible for that and check on their smartphone. But do I want to teach a 12-year-old to build some of those independent skills? Yes, we do. So they might need a smartphone. They might because their blood sugar needs to be checked across the day. And they might be like, oh, mum, dad, my levels are high, help me. And the parents can do it on their phone. There's this incredible technology with pumps and insulin. But I know children who need a smartphone. So when we just ban them straight out, I'm like, you're also, for me, it's ableist and privileged because there are some children that need this and you might not see the reasons behind it, but if you knew them, maybe you would accept it and not judge it. Another reason that I know from my therapy room, children who recognize that their sexuality is different. None of their friends are like them.
Yeah.
Okay. And they can't see anyone who looks like them, feels like them, thinks like them. You go online and you might find a group of people and you might get a sense of belonging. And that sense of belonging is critical in adolescence. And again, to me, there's a huge benefit for some young people to find group of teenagers where they go, I'm not on my own. And again, lots of people will say, well, they can get that when they're older. Yeah. And you don't know how that might affect their mental health. If you're in a village type school, and by the way, most people don't live in London, they're a big city.
Yeah.
Like they just don't. So I know kids who go to little schools. Their secondary school might be big because it's for a whole county, but they then have to travel for an hour and a half to get home. And, they're on their own. Would you not want your kid to have a phone so that they could contact you if the trains are delayed or something's happening? Or, yeah, like I would. I would. I'm not in that situation. So I have the privilege to say, well, my daughter doesn't need a smartphone to get to school. Great for me, but that's not the case for everyone. So what age? I really struggle with it because there's nuance in this. I think the thing that I believe is that I trust parents to make the right choice for their kids. And I know some people will say, oh, but some parents don't recognize the dangers of smartphones. Maybe that's the case, but maybe they're still doing their best. The more we educate, the more we have conversations like we're having today, the more there's wide information out there. But with a caveat of, yes, smartphones may have an impact on mental health, but they may benefit you and your family. You have to make that choice for you. I just think if we could build a way of being more understanding, less judgmental of each other, there's so much judgment in parenting already. Do we need this extra pressure? I don't think so. And again, as a clinical psychologist, I will say this. on my hand, I have never met a kid who has terrible mental health and it's just because of their smartphone. Yes, I've met
Mm,
kids who are cyberbullied and it absolutely impacts on their mental health
mm,
and they're teenagers. And I just think, oh my God, if only the internet didn't exist, but it
right.
does exist. But I've also met kids who are bullied at school and they have the
Yeah.
same impact. It has the same impact on their mental health. So we need to think more widely about this. It isn't ever just one thing.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
more complicated than that.
So picking up on the cyberbullying, things go wrong sometimes, don't they? So that, some a kid's being cyberbullied or they've come across content online or there's something more sinister that's happening through these apps. How does a parent navigate that? Or how does a parent try and keep their child, their teen safe, specifically with the smartphones? What would your advice be there?
So I think it's really easy in that moment as a parent to be like, right, the smartphone gone,
It's
everything
gone. Yeah.
removed. Right. And by the way, if that's what you've done, get it. I mean, absolutely. You
Mm,
want to, first thing as a parent that you will be told to do is protect your kid. Now, I would say that's okay. That's just like a snap.
mm,
We're doing this.
yeah.
But you can also do something else in the middle while you protect them from the smartphone, the internet. You might say, right, for me, it's about being like, this is a really difficult thing to navigate. And clearly, you need more protection. So I'm here to protect you. And part of that
Yeah.
protection might be initially to say no smartphone. It's not a
Mhm.
punishment. Okay. There's a difference between being punished and being like, I am protecting you. But secondly, I think the most important thing, the thing that's going to help kids through this the most, is to just sit with them and be curious
Mm,
and say, tell me what happened. It's not your fault that you're being bullied, but tell me what happened or something uncomfortable's happened. So I know that kids, it is cyberbullying, but I have had like images of them shared without their consent with
yeah.
horrible things being said. And
Mm,
it just grows because it's the internet. It
yeah.
just grows so fast. So talk to them about it. Ask them real questions like, how did it make you feel when that happened? And let's say it's been going on for months. It often has. It's not like kids don't
Mm,
tend to come to us straight away. They tend to think, it'll be okay. I'll fix this or I'll manage it. And then they can't. So
mm,
ask them, how long has it been going on for? Thank them for telling you. Always thank your kid when they tell you something hard. And then try and work it out. Honestly, be like, okay, let's have a think about how we navigate this. What do we need to do to keep you safe? Photos, again, digital resilience, such an important skill. We need to teach our kids that things like photos and videos, they last a lifetime
mm,
on the internet. They last forever. So we need to help them understand that. If you take a picture of yourself, if you allow somebody to take a photo of you in a certain way, that might stay there for life.
mm,
And if it does happen, we can navigate it, okay? Because it's a photo, it's not all of you. Let's help kids realize that a photo, a video, a comment online is just one part of
yeah.
our world. The digital world is just a little
Mm,
entity. And then we have the real world. And then we have ourselves and our sense of ourselves. And so those things are important to discuss and talk about with our children. And then I think about taking safe steps and maybe saying, okay, so maybe being on TikTok, whatever it is,
mm,
making apps, Instagram, whatever,
yeah.
is not somewhere that you can be on yet. Okay, because it's not right. This is not keeping you safe. So let's talk about, if I give your smartphone back, what are the things, the skills that you need to learn to show me that you have before I'm okay to give this back to you?
Mm,
And what do we need to do about the bullying that you've experienced in the real world, not just the digital world, which might be avoided, shut down,
mm,
which is okay. That's going to protect your kid to put some tighter boundaries around the internet
mm,
for them. But in the real world, how do we navigate this? Because it's often a friend, it's often somebody in the real world who's done this to your child. So how do we
mm,
navigate that? Does your child need to learn assertiveness skills? Does your child need some conversations about what is a healthy friendship and what is a toxic friendship?
mm,
Does your child need some skills about how to get appropriate adults involved in safeguarding them? Like, teachers have responsibility here. They've got a duty of
mm,
care. When we put our children, even teenagers, when we put our kids in school, we are saying to the adults in that establishment, you are looking after my child.
yeah.
So Again, is this somebody from school? Obviously, it's going to be somebody they know, more likely, even if they've changed their name, they're trolling, but it's someone. What does school have to do to navigate this, to support children with this? Not just one individual, but this is a
Yeah.
school culture. There's a teenage, something's
Mm,
happening in those social groups in that school that's allowing cyberbullying to happen. So, what do
mm,
you need to put in place to support kids? Education, teaching them about the wrongs and the rights
mhm,
digitally, teaching them who they can go to if something like this happens that will
mm,
safeguard them. There should be more than one person in a school that kids can access and talk to. And
mhm.
so if it's not your mum and dad, then you still have an adult supporting you through this. For me, it's not one step, as you can tell. It's quite complicated.
Yeah.
It's protection online. It's having open conversations that build trust and safety in your relationship with your kid, because that's paramount for me. And it's building coping strategies, like activating ideas of how you keep your kids safe. And again,
Mm,
if you have these conversations early on, build digital skills, build digital resilience before they get a smartphone, you're going to be helping them prevent this
yeah.
because they will know. I mean, you can't prevent bullying. Fact. If it's
Mhm,
going to happen, it's going to happen. And that says nothing on you as a parent. You haven't done anything wrong. It says nothing on your kid. Bullying is just a part of childhood growing up as well. Lots of
mhm,
adults get bullied. It's a part of what we're like as
mhm.
humans in interaction with each other. But we can teach our kids how to cope through this and who to get support from in a timely and appropriate way so that they're not ashamed because they're like, oh, I remember my parents. I remember they said if this ever happened, it's not my fault and I can get help and there's no shame in it. If we do that early on, our kids are safer just by teaching them the right skills.
Yeah. I think where my mind is going to, I also grew up without internet. Really. Um,
Same,
so I think there's
same.
definitely something about our cohort of parents that also weren't taught, as you said earlier, weren't
Mhm.
taught how to use the internet or use smartphones safely.
Yeah.
And generationally now, it's completely different, isn't it? So I often find myself thinking, I don't know how to navigate this because I haven't had this experience when I was younger. So
Mhm.
it's like I have got no reference
Mhm.
point at all. And so then you go online and there's so many
Mhm.
different bits of advice and it all gets a bit, well, I just got really confused by it all. And it's different. So I have a 12-year-old going on 16 and almost 16-year-old, and they're very different in terms of how they use their smartphones. So my eldest,
Mhm.
he games a lot, so he chats with his friends most nights when they're online. Doesn't really use his phone, whereas my youngest does use the phone for chatting, but he doesn't do
Mhm.
gaming. So it's very different. And again, I think it's difficult to know, a tween versus a teen and what are their differing needs, I suppose, socially and
Mhm.
digitally. So do you have any guidance on the differences between those two age groups?
I think it's not about age. I think one of the
Okay.
things that we know from research, it's not, I mean, of course, age has an influence, but it's more about personality and
Mm-hmm.
individual kind of interest, right? And I love that
Mm-hmm.
example that your eldest is really into gaming, but your 12-year-old isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of 12-year-olds are into gaming, but yours isn't, right? Some 12-year-olds might be into makeup or watching makeup videos, or because I know about this, or things like cooking. And they really want to learn how to bake. They're really into like
Mm-hmm.
Great British Bake Off or whatever, or dances, like the TikTok
Yeah. Yeah.
dances. Like loads of teens are like, let's play this music and learn this dance.
Yeah.
And I think it's so individual. That's the bit that's
Mm-hmm.
hard. But I think as a parent, it is about, you know your kid best. You know what they're interested in, gauging that kind of risk benefit and what
Yeah.
are they going to use their smartphone for. You're going to be really well placed to know this because you know your kid. For example, she's 5. My daughter is so into art. She's
Mm-hmm.
so into drawing. And we have a tablet which she has access to under supervision and she draws on it. Mainly, she paints and draws as a Crayola app. She loves it. And it's got little games that are actually teaching her digital skills, but all of it is drawing. I know for a fact that when she becomes a teenager, she's going to be into makeup. because I mean, she comes into the room and she looks at my stuff and that, and I don't actually have that much. I wear makeup, but not very much. She
Mm.
loves asking questions about it. She wants to understand it. I think she's going to be into like, she loves face paint, all that kind of stuff. She's
Yeah.
creative. So I know that. So I know that she's more likely to look for videos of makeup, for example, if she had access to
Mm.
smartphone or the internet freely. So I will have a conversation with her about where is she watching these videos? Who is she watching? Who are these
Mm.
people, these influencers, whoever they are? Who are they? Are they makeup artists? Are they just anyone?
Yeah.
And how can I, as a parent, guide her to be like, you know what? You're allowed to watch this and this, or this person and that person through this medium for this amount of time,
Mm.
kind of semi supervised because I know what you're watching, but anything else is a no go. For me, it's about that. It's about the conversations
Mm.
of what are you going to use it for? How do we set some boundaries? And how, enter your children's world. I say this all the time to parents, including with gaming, 100%. If you've not done this, Liz, I definitely invite you to sit with your eldest and play. Teach me how to play this game that you play with your friends.
Mm.
I want to play it
Yeah.
just for half an hour. And often teenagers are like, what? And you're like, I want to know what you're doing. Like, not with your
Yeah.
mates, just you and me, open a new profile. Can we play this
Mm.
game? Now, I guarantee that you're not going to be very good at this. But I also guarantee that even if your teenager's like, this is freaking awkward the first
Mm.
time, he will love it. We're teaching you something they know and you don't. Teens love that. Like,
Yeah.
my
Mm.
parent can't do this. Two, I am pretty sure that if you do it willingly with openness, you're going to love it. So I love gaming. I love game. I love video games. I get why
Right.
teenagers love gaming because I like them
Yeah.
too. But if you start to enjoy it, you might actually build a new relationship with your kid where you say, you know what, on a Saturday afternoon, can we protect like an hour where you play that video game just you and I?
Yeah.
This is how you build really good relationships with your teenager because your teen is like, you want to do the thing I want to do?
Yeah.
And now you're learning and you're getting good at it and we're actually enjoying it. That's beautiful because
Mm.
it's not the same as early childhood where kids do the things that you want them to do with you. When they become teenagers, tweens, that's when you have to start to enter their world. Even if, like you were saying, it's so different to ours. I didn't do
Yeah.
any of this when I was a kid. I don't know what I'm doing. Let your kid teach you. Like that is a really beautiful, important thing. And it will help you keep your kids safe. Because while you're playing the game, you will learn certain things about it. Or while you're,
Mm.
if you're the kid who loves chatting, be like,
Mm.
where do you chat with your friends? I don't know what they do. Like maybe it's WhatsApp. We go like, can you and I have a little WhatsApp? If you haven't got one, you definitely should. And then you
Mhm.
do it. Maybe you send a photo. Maybe you
Yeah.
test out these opportunities to build resilience. When you send a photo, for example, a family photo or a photo you've taken with your child or of your child, and you say, hey, by text, I'm thinking of sending this to grandma. How do you feel about it? Give them that
Mm.
experience of somebody asking me about a photo.
Mhm.
Because when their friends don't do that, they will also start to think, maybe this is a really important thing, consent about my digital identity, which
Yeah.
is really important. And we don't talk about it. And if you're a parent who's building that up with your kids, you're teaching them skills alongside it.
I actually can't take a picture of my kids without them saying, I do consent or I don't consent. They're very,
Love
they're
that.
very vocal.
I love that.
Yeah.
Seems brilliant.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So there's so many things that you said today that are just like little gems. 3 key tips for parents. So parents that are listening that are navigating these murky waters of smartphone use, what would they be, those tips?
I guess the first one would be educate yourself. And for that, you need opportunities to experience the things that your kid might be interested in online. So, yeah, get yourself a Snapchat login, go
Mhm.
on TikTok, go game with your kid. Genuinely
Yeah.
get yourself in there. Don't just make assumptions or,
Mm.
fantasize about what it's like. Get in there. And yeah, I've got in there. And there's certain apps I'm like, because I don't like what I see, but you need to see it. You need to
Yeah.
experience it. Don't just do it for like 10 minutes and leave it and say, oh, that's really
Mhm.
complicated. Learn about it.
Yeah.
Things that are hard are often really useful. So, tip one is get into
Yeah.
your teen world and make sense of what they might see online and how to navigate that for yourself. Two, for me, role modeling. Like you are your kid's best teacher. And the most powerful thing you can do is role model healthy digital habits. If we are banning smartphones right out without any conversation, without any kind of negotiation about what skills your child needs or when you can trust that they can do it safely, what ifs. If you're not doing that, you're just doing a straightforward ban, then I want you to really think carefully about whether you're banning smartphones for yourself too, because otherwise you're giving your child a very difficult message about one day I will have free reign, free access to the smartphone thing, and nobody will know what I'm doing. To me, that's not healthy.
Yeah.
And thirdly, trust yourself. Like, trust yourself to know what's right for your kid. I think conversations are really polarized at the moment. So on social media, but also like the social, the narrative in our society. I think the conversations are important. I think it's time that we talk about the health risks and the benefits. So for me, there's nuance in this.
Yeah.
And, it's in 2020 that there was that documentary which was about Facebook and social media, The Social Dilemma. And I talked about it straight away. I was like, all parents should watch this. It's so important. We need to be really aware of all of this, that just give kids tablets and, free reign. But, I don't think anything happened in 2020. I think it just went quiet. And now for some reason, there's momentum. I think the momentum is useful, but I think I trust parents are making the right choice for themselves. And I would also be very cautious of judging another for what they're doing. So this idea of my friend has a phone, like you were saying before, I think for me, my third tip is to kind of have a conversation with your kid about it. Talk about it. Don't just be like, yeah, okay, but you don't. Shut down. Talk about it. Okay. And what do you think you're missing out on? What do you think they're doing that you're not getting to do? And if you had a phone, what would you be doing with it? And do you think you could navigate X, Y, Z? So as a parent, you need to think about your rationale, not just follow, like a peer follower. Like, actually think about it. What do you not trust your child to do? What do you need to teach them so you can trust it? How can you build this up over time?
Yeah.
Because when we give kids a rationale and an understanding of what's needed, they often follow through. They're more willing to be like, okay, well, I hate it, but I get it. I've listened to you because you've listened to me too. So yeah, those would be my complicated 3 tips, because I don't think there are any easy tips really.
No, they're brilliant tips. Thank you so much, Marta, for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's such a lovely conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Hello Therapy. If you found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, follow, and review. You can get more well-being and mental health tips by joining our email list and visiting the resources section of our website at harleyclinical.co.uk. The Hello Therapy podcast and the information provided by me, Dr. Liz White, is solely intended for information and educational purposes and does not constitute personalised advice. Please do reach out to your GP or a mental health professional if you need support. Until next time, take care of yourself.